Alrighty, so it's time to do another News of the Week episode, as we definitely had a couple of blockbuster interleague trade that happened in these past couple of days, and some transfer reports and signings, and most importantly, the World Cup qualifying in the CONCACAF region is going to resume this week, and that the US, of course, will be playing against El Salvador and Canada in the January World Cup qualifying. Oh, also, I forgot to mention, they're also playing against Honduras in February too. But yeah, we'll definitely talk about the U.S. Men's National Team World Cup qualifier roster in January in this video, and of course, we'll talk about that last, as I always would do with anything related to national team stuff. But first, let's talk about some MLS stuff, and as I mentioned just a couple of seconds ago, there were a couple of blockbuster trades that happened in MLS this last couple of days. The first one is the Chicago Fire signing Kacper Przyblyko from the Philadelphia Union in exchange for $1.15 million general allocation money. Now, obviously, I've talked about this before, that it seems like most likely the Fire is going to get Przyblyko, and that with the way that the Union seems to be looking for a new striker, and I'll talk about a little bit later in this video, that they're also might have just found one in Denmark, but yeah, the Fire, it seems like most likely is going to get Przyblyko, and indeed they of course have got. Though I will say the price that they paid for him is a little bit steep. I mean, $1.15 million general allocation money. I mean, with how money has been thrown around, and how it seems like the amount that teams get with allocation money, I think this feels a little bit less than what we say maybe a season or two ago, where anytime when there's a blockbuster move that goes over $1 million general allocation money, people get really stunned by that. But nowadays, with how the allocation money, and it seems like teams are willing to spend more in GAM in terms of getting players in the league, I don't think it's as big of a surprise as it is before. But that being said, it is still a hefty price, and we'll see how Przyblyko will fit with the Chicago Fire. I mean, I know Union fans have said that, yes, Przyblyko, when you look at his stats number, it seems good and all, but really he's kind of another guy that just kind of almost similar to Robert Berge, where he can be a very streaky kind of player, where if he's on, he's definitely on, but if he's not on, then he does have a tough time in terms of sort of snapping out of his goal drought. But in some way, isn't that kind of what all number 9 is, where when you're a number 9 and you basically can able to score goals and you go on a great run, you're obviously going to have these type of time when you're going to go on good run and score like 6 or 7 goals in a row. But when you're of course are ice cold, that's always going to be tough for a striker to kind of come out of it. But I do believe that Przyblyko will fit well with the Fire, and I would also say that he is definitely a little bit more danger than Robert Berge, and especially with the way that he I mean, I know the Union keeps saying that don't look at the stats, but number don't lie. He's a guy that can produce in this league, and is a proven goal scorer in MLS. And when you get a proven goal scorer in MLS in your roster, you know that you're going to get you made a good signing, and you're going to get a guy that can help in terms of the goal scoring department. And I think Przyblyko will definitely be that, and I won't be surprised he's going to once again score 10 plus goals with this Chicago Fire team. Now, LAFC have acquired goalkeeper Maxime Crepeau from the Vancouver Whitecaps from $1 million general allocation money. Now, we do know a little bit more about this, and originally in my last News of the Week episode, I talked about Maxime Crepeau leaving the Whitecaps and how I was kind of stunned the Whitecaps is even thinking about letting him go to another team. Consider he's easily one of the top 5 goalkeeper in this league, and what is the Whitecaps thinking of letting go their best goalkeeper to another team? But it seems like we have heard more about why exactly they decided to do, and apparently from what we heard is that it seems like Crepel does have some personal issue, that he kind of wanted his way out of Vancouver. And honestly, whenever there is a player that maybe has personal issue and that they want to maybe move to somewhere else, I completely respect that decision. I mean, it's obviously unfortunate for the Whitecaps that this, of course, is the case, but for Maxime Crepeau, he's got to do what he needs to do, and obviously LAFC, so he kind of saw that as an opportunity and trying to get it. I mean, they still didn't pay the Whitecaps very cheaply to get Crepeau. I mean, $1 million. I mean, I talk about how it seems like $1 million nowadays isn't as big as what we saw a couple of seasons ago. But that isn't the case for goalkeeper. Like that is a lot of money for a goalkeeper. In fact, I think that's like the most amount of general allocation money that two teams traded for a goalkeeper we've ever seen. Because I don't remember the last time I've seen a goalkeeper being traded to another team for that huge amount of money. But nevertheless, you know, I think this is definitely a good move. I mean, it's not a good move for the Whitecaps because they do lose their best goalkeeper, and now it's going to be interesting to see. You know, there's that decision of whether or not if they think that Thomas Hasel is ready to step in, or maybe they might need to go around the league to shop for a new goalkeeper in replace for Crepel. But for LAFC, this is definitely a big signing, and one that can definitely finally solve one of the biggest issue that they've been having ever since Tyron Miller left the team, which is they just don't have a reliable goalkeeper. Now, Orlando City have signed Uruguayan forward Facundo Torres for a club record fee $7.5 million with a $1.5 million bonus in addition. And, you know, this signing not only is a good signing for Orlando City, but it's actually less than I thought they would. Like, I remember a couple of weeks ago when they were rumored to get this guy, it seems like Orlando City was going to pay upwards like $10 million to $12 million to Pinheiro to get this guy. But the fact that they only paid $7.5 million, and, you know, yes, there is the added bonus that does get this transfer fee to up to $9 million. But I think that's a good deal, and you know, for Orlando, it's pretty clear that they need a number 9, and especially after they lost DK in terms of this offseason to West Brom. They need to, of course, find a replacement for that, and we'll see whether or not if Facundo Torres is going to be that. I mean, there's a lot of good things that come out of this kid, so I expect he's going to be decent. And if he is decent, then technically Orlando City did not only break even in terms of the sale that they have for DK, and then of course using that to reinvest by signing a very talented South American striker, but they kind of make some money out of that too, because, you know, they sold DK for $9.5 million, and the $9 million that they paid Pinheiro to get Facundo Torres, they made upwards about $500,000, which doesn't seem like a lot, but, you know, any money, of course, would be a bonus, and especially to get a guy to replace a guy that you, of course, sold off for a big profit, and he could be easily as good. I mean, that's going to be even a bigger bonus, especially with the way that they also, of course, make some money out of this move. But now, moving on, in terms of next news, is Inter Miami. So, Inter Miami kind of basically did a counter move in this. I mean, they probably saw their Florida interstate rival making a big move in terms of striker position. So, they decided to do the same thing. They signed for Leandro Campana on loan from Wolverhampton Wanderers. Now, despite the fact that he was with Wolves, he actually have never appeared a single game with the Premier League team, and he's actually been loaned to teams in Portugal and most recently in Switzerland. And, you know, there's definitely some question about whether or not if he of course is going to work out. I mean, he's also still a relatively young number 9, and that, you know, he's definitely going to get a good teacher in terms of him being on the same team as Gonzalo Higuain, and that I'm pretty sure Higuain would teach him all the skills in terms. So maybe be the future number 9 for this Inter Miami team. But, you know, we'll see if that, of course, is the case. And you know, we'll see whether or not if he, of course, work out for the team. I mean, they for Inter Miami, technically, because of the fact that this is only a loan move, if it doesn't work out, they don't really need to, of course, pay anything or take a lot of risk. And I always feel like when you get loan move for players, whether they're coming from South America or coming from Europe, it's always a low risk and high reward situation. I mean, if it works out, then basically purchase him outright. But if it doesn't work out, then you can just kind of send him back to the team that you, of course, asked to loan him in the first place, and nothing will be lost in terms of the financial part of the deal. Now, the LA Galaxy have acquired midfielder Marky Delgado from Toronto for up to $500,000 general allocation money. I think this is a decent signing because I always love Marky Delgado, especially his time with Toronto. And yes, I know TFC fans are going. One of the things that I know TFC fans will always talk about whenever, or will always mention whenever they mentioned about Marky Delgado is that infamous miss that he had against Chivas in that CCL final in 2018. But overall, he's a very serviceable player, and I think the Galaxy is going to get a guy that will be very serviceable. And also, not to mention, I think this is a clear replacement for Jonathan Dos Santos in that midfield. And I think Delgado, I wouldn't say he's better than Jonathan Dos Santos, but he's equally as good as with the way that Dos Santos, even though he was sitting on DP contract, he wasn't really looking like worth of a player that should occupy one of the DP spot. And not to mention, he's also been injured a lot of time. And the fact that the Galaxy is able to get a decent replacement from JDS for even less amount of money, I think this is a smart move. And also, not to mention, I feel like this is a very Gregg Vanny signing, with the way that it seems like Gregg Vanny is trying to recreate the Toronto FC team from 2017. Like, all they need is for the Galaxy to sign Sebastian Giovinco, and we might as well just kind of complete almost half of that core of a TFC team that was literally the best team in the league and arguably the best team in history back in 2017. Because after all, they already have Victor Vasquez and now getting Marky Delgado. I mean, all they need is Sebastian Giovinco, and maybe even ask Josie Outdoor to come to the Galaxy and see how of course that of course work out. But nevertheless, like I said, I think this is a decent signing for the Galaxy. Though, moving on, in terms of the next news, we talked about LAFC, who earlier I talked about how they signed the Vancouver Whitecaps number one goalkeeper in Maxime Crepeau. Well, they also signed another goalkeeper. This time they decided to sign Inter Miami goalkeeper John Mccarthy, who was formerly a number one before kind of losing his spot to Nick Marsman. And, obviously for John McCarthy, I mean, I guess it's a good move in a sense that he's now going to be joining a team that maybe will have more success heading into this season. I mean, I'm not trying to diss Inter Miami, but if I had to choose who will most likely make the playoffs this season, I bank on LAFC rather than Inter Miami. But nevertheless, I know that when he does join with LAFC, there's no doubt he's not going to be the starter, and you could even argue maybe he's going to be a second or third choice goalkeeper, because we know Crepel is going to be that number one goalkeeper. Then you got Thomas Romero, and then probably John McCarthy is going to be in that third string spot. But like I said, if you can earn some good money, and it seems like maybe LAFC is going to offer him a good contract, and not to mention you're able to join a much more successful full team. Yeah, I would have definitely take that, even though if I'm not going to get a lot of minutes spent. And that can be said the same in terms of the next news topic that I'm going to talk about, where another goalkeeper that's been kind of having got a lot of game minutes and used to be kind of what was supposed to be the number one, and maybe the replacement of a starting goalkeeper that kind of went down with an injury. And I'm talking about Gregg Berhalter. And yes, I kind of now know how to pronounce his last name, though, during his time with Minnesota, and especially in the early 2019 season, I just kind of pronounce it as Gregg, because that's kind of the best way to do it. Well, unfortunately, he is not going to be with Minnesota anymore. I mean, the Loons did of course cut ties with him I think last season, and now he is going to be going to TFC and sign a contract with them through 2023. Now, obviously, I think he's also going to be a third string goalkeeper for Toronto FC, because right now there still seems to be a battle between Westberg and Bono in terms of who is going to be the starting goalkeeper for this TFC team. And honestly, I think I'm kind of surprised the fact that TFC might have not even looked into the goalkeeper situation, with the way that I don't think Bono and Westbrook was very good last season, and I just thought that maybe they were going to move on from them, or maybe even look for another decent goalkeeper that can basically be between the stakes and hopefully guide them into a relatively successful season. But it seems like they're going to be sticking with both of these guys, and now adding Richardson and maybe kind of a depth piece, where in case if both Bono and Westbrook does go out with injury, or if both of them that don't work out well, then maybe Richardson will get a chance, because I think he had an okay stint during his time with Minnesota, and if I also think that he could be a decent backup goalkeeper, even though in this case he's probably going to be just a third string goalkeeper. Now, FC Dallas have loaned defender Justin Shea to Hoffenheim, and this is kind of just a confirmation because we talked a little bit about that in the last news of the week, how Justin Shea going to Hoffenheim and hope to get some minutes, and I think he is going to get some minutes, knowing the fact that the Bundesliga and a lot of the club in the Bundesliga has really given a chance to young Americans to get some minutes and even get some minutes starting for their team. And then, of course, Ezequiel Barco has officially joined River Plate on loan from Atlanta United, and this pretty much also confirmed that Thiago Almada is going to be going to Atlanta United and has signed a DP contract with them, because this was really the only thing that was kind of barring Thiago Almada to join Atlanta United, because they need to get out the contract situation with Barco, and in general just get rid of one of their DP player, or one of their DP player down to a TAM contract so that they can free up a DP spot. And in this case, we have heard a lot of talk about Barco potentially going to European team, and in some way I think there was talk the fact that he was going to be going to Internacional instead of River Plate, but obviously I mentioned before, when there was that rumor of both LGP and Barco was going to go to River Plate, I had a feeling both of them was going to do so, and especially in Barco's situation, where it's going to be interesting to see how he is going to do with River Plate, and that, and we'll see whether, if he is going to light up with him, that he's going to be bought back from Atlanta United. Maybe Atlanta could sell him off to Europe. I mean, it's kind of weird the fact that throughout these last couple of years of the way that Atlanta has developed Ezequiel Barco, and how when we saw him arrive the scene and we thought that he was going to be like the next Miguel Almiron, it didn't really quite work out. And last season he definitely had his breakout year, which just kind of makes me wonder, why did Atlanta maybe not think about moving on for him to Europe, instead of maybe just kind of hold him on for a little bit longer, but also not the same case, because they need to free up a DP spot and send him just going to a powerhouse team in Argentina known as River Plate on loan for a bit. Now, another player that is also going to be going on loan, but this is a player that is going on loan to Europe, is Janelle Bicam, who is going to be going on loan to Vicenza in Italy. Now, originally, when I first read that article, I thought he was going to go to Valencia, because, again, they sound a very, very similar name, and especially the way the spelling is, it sounds very similar to Valencia, and it seems like Valencia is a team that just seems to have that MLS fever, with the way that they signed so many players that comes from MLS and basically join the team. I mean, guys like Nani, Gianluca Busio, and Tanner Tessman, all is part of Valencia, and I thought Janelle Bicam was going to be the latest player. Though I will say that this signing is also kind of a little bit strange, because Bicam is going to be going to a team that is in the relegation zone in Serie B, and potentially they could be relegated next season. So why in the world does he decide to, I get that he alongside with a lot of players does have their dream to play in Europe, though I think he's actually Portuguese, so it's kind of interesting thing how that, of course, would work out. But I'm kind of surprised the fact that he is going to be going to a team that most likely is not going to be even in the second division of Italy. And if I have to choose the quality between the third division of Italy to MLS and a team that is definitely on the up and rise, I would have think that he would have been staying with the Whitecaps instead of just going to a random team in Italy that most likely is going to be in the third division next season. But we'll see whether or not, of course, it will work out. And keep in mind, this is only a loan move, so if Bicam doesn't fit there, he can always rejoin the Vancouver Whitecaps. Now, moving on in terms of the next news and talk about some re-signing that happened. So, unlike my last News of the Week episode where I had to talk about a bunch of players getting a new contract extension, in this episode, there's only 3 players that I've saw in the news cycle that have a contract extension, and those players are Freddie Montero, Alex Rodon, and Ayo Akinola. And in the case of Montero and Rodon, they resigned with the Seattle Sounders, and then Akinola going back to TFC, and announcing he's going to get a new contract. I mean, I think this is something that is not only good news for TFC, but in general, this also kind of confirmed of us thinking where exactly Akinola is going to be going, and that there's been a lot of speculation that he was going to be leaving TFC this offseason and make his jump to Europe and join a European team, but it seems like that's not going to be the case, and it's understandable because, you know, he's still trying to recover from that devastating knee injury that he suffered last season, and hopefully if he is going to be once again having a great breakout year like he did in his first season with TFC, he is going to definitely get that move to Europe, and I expect TFC is going to cash in terms of the good asset that they have for Ayo Akinola. But that being said, I am now going to switch boards because like many of the News of the Week episode I've done in the off season, this is not the only news that has happened in the past couple of days, and now I'm going to have to switch the boards to talk about some of the transfer rumor, and most importantly, talk about the 28-man roster that Gregg Berhalter and the U.S. men's national team announced for this January World Cup qualifying window in the CONCACAF region. So now let's talk about some of the transfer rumors that happened in these last couple of days, and no doubt the biggest transfer rumor that happened in these last couple of days come from New England and come from Taylor Twellman, who tweeted out that Matt Turner is actually getting strong interest from Arsenal, and that he could potentially be going to the Premier League to join the Gunners. Now, there's no doubt that this seems like a very Zach Steffen 2.0 kind of move, where remember how Zach Steffen, he got the call that he was going to potentially go to join Man City, and indeed that of course is the case, and then he of course spent a year on loan with Dusseldorf before becoming a second choice goalkeeper and play kind of second fiddle behind Ederson there during his time with Man City, and it seems like this is going to be the same case with Matt Turner, though from what I know is that Arsenal, they already had two decent goalkeepers, though I have heard that one of their main goalkeeper in Brent Leno potentially is going to be on his way out, and it seems like Ramsdale is a guy that they're thinking is going to be the futures, and he's probably going to be the starting goalkeeper for Arsenal, though Matt Turner is most likely going to be a second choice if he does join Arsenal. And again, this is kind of tricky. I mean, you know, depending on how you feel about this, if you're a U.S. men's national team fan, I'm pretty sure they're not going to be happy about this, knowing the fact that, you know, there's now going to be two of their best goalkeeper playing backup role to relatively decent Premier League team. Well, I wouldn't say relatively decent. I mean, that would be huge disrespect toward Man City. But, you know, that's going to be interesting, and in some way they'll be frustrated with the way that, you know, now we have two goalkeepers not getting a lot of minutes, and they are expected to be the guy that will really carry us in terms of the goalkeeping position to try to get us to the World Cup in Qatar later this year. But on the other hand, you can also say that, you know, as an MLS fans, and at least, you know, if you're Matt Turner, I think this move will make sense, and that, you know, if I'm Matt Turner, I would definitely take this move. Yes, you're not going to get as much minutes as he did during his time with the Revs, but knowing the fact that he's going to be joining the Premier League, where, you know, we know the Premier League is where the money is, and he's going to get a huge paycheck if he does decide to join Arsenal, and not only the fact that he's also not going to be really out of the U.S. men's national team window, because we know that, you know, as long as you're playing in Europe, and especially joining a team that is always competing in the top 4 position of Europe, you basically are not going to be out of the U.S. men's national team picture. So yeah, this is going to be an interesting decision that Matt Turner is going to do, and in some way, I would say the other thing that makes him want to make this move is the fact that he's not a young player. Like, he is a kind of a guy that is kind of a late bloomer in terms of MLS goalkeeper, where, you know, he started his career in a way, he came out of the draft and didn't really get his opportunity with New England until like around 26, and I think he's now like 27 or 28 right now. So if there is any chance for him to maybe make his jump to Europe, this might be the last opportunity to do so. And you know that there's know that this opportunity maybe will not come again. So we'll see whether or not if Turner is going to make the move, and especially the fact that even if he's going to be joining Arsenal, there's no guarantee the fact that I know he's probably going to be a second choice goalkeeper, but I won't be surprised Arsenal is going to do the same thing that Man City did with Steffen, where they decided to loan him to another club to get some game minutes. So maybe I think that's the side that some U.S. men's national team fans should see, where yes, he's going to be joining a club where he pretty much practically is not going to get a lot of minutes, but there is a guarantee that he might not even join that club and might be just go on loan and get some game minutes. And apparently I know the U.S. men's national team feel like their players should obviously be players that can at least get some minutes with the team, because you of course rather want to have a decent player that of course get minutes with a club rather than having a decent player that doesn't get any minutes and are part of a good club, because you wouldn't know that they of course are actually decent or not, despite joining a very decent team. Now the LA Galaxy is linked with Brazilian winger Douglas Costa. And remember Douglas Costa and his career, where he used to be a Bayern Munich player, and then of course spent time with Juventus, and that I have no idea what happened to his career, where I think last year he was part of that Grêmio team in the Brazilian Serie A that got relegated. And keep in mind, Grêmio is considered one of the powerhouse in Brazilian soccer, and the fact that he was part of that team that got relegated just to show that his career has just kind of took a turn for its worst. But that being said, we've seen before where when we have players that are at the highest point in Europe, and then their career took a turn for its worst, once they come to MLS, it seems like they rejuvenate again. And this could maybe be the case for Douglas Costa, who I still think he is definitely a decent winger, and that knowing the Galaxy definitely needs an option in terms of not only on the wing but also on the attack. I think Douglas Costa definitely makes sense for the Galaxy, though we'll see whether or not if they're going to make him a DP player, because if they do make him a designated player, yeah, that's a little bit risky, because like I said, this is not the same Douglas Costa that we seen a couple of years ago during his time with Bayern Munich, where he was definitely considered a guy that was one of the best winger in the world during that time. Now, the Philadelphia Union is reported to chase Danish striker Mikkel, and I am sorry if I butcher this name, but I think it's Uru, that's how you say it, from Brøndby IF. So, as I mentioned before, knowing the Union lost Przyblyko, they are desperate in terms of looking for a number 9. And from what I heard about him, he definitely is a guy that knows how to score and can be a proven goal scorer. And knowing the fact that the Union definitely wants to have a proven goal scorer like they did with Przyblyko, at least in the regular season, I think this is going to be a good signing. And in fact, they actually is going to go as far as making him a designated player if they do sign him. So they better hope that he, of course, does well, and he could be a perfect Przyblyko replacement after they lost him to the Chicago Fire just a couple of days ago. Now, Inter Miami is looking to sign U.S. men's national team defender Deandre Yetland, and if this does happen, this pretty much finally confirms our speculation of whether or not if Yetland is indeed going to be coming back to MLS. Because for a while now, you just feel like Deandre Yetland and his time in Europe is starting to come to an end, and he has had a really interesting career in Europe. I mean, he started his career, I think, with Tottenham, and then went to Newcastle. Did get a lot of minutes there, but now recently he's with Galatasaray, where it doesn't seem like he is getting a lot of minutes. And for a guy that is still a big part of this U.S. men's national team, I don't think him going back to MLS is a huge downgrade. And especially if he does go back to MLS, I guarantee that he could be one of the best fullbacks in the league. I mean, he's been proven that he can do well in MLS, especially during his times with the Seattle Sounders a couple of years ago. And again, if Inter Miami does pull off this move, this will be a huge move for this team, and that is another example of how Inter Miami is starting to turn their fortune around, and that their GM Chris Henderson is starting to repair some of the damage and starting to not think about just gunning for these big name players so that they can get butts in the seats at that stadium, but more like make some smart signing to be a competitive MLS team. Now there is a report suggests that DC United have received an offer for $8 to $9 million from Wolfsburg for Kacper Przyblyko. Now, don't get me wrong, Kacper Przyblyko last season, he had an incredible year with DC United and no doubt a breakout year. But even then, I was kind of surprised with the figure that Wolfsburg is looking to pay. Like, that just tells me that it seems like Wolfsburg sees this kid to be a very, very good talent. And, you know, if you're DC, I mean, I know losing Kacper Przyblyko is going to be tough, and that they will lose some of his midfield presence if they do decide to sell him on. But I won't be surprised they would accept it, because of that offer, like that's usually an offer for some of the more well-known player that we know that most likely is going to be going to Europe. And Kacper Przyblyko is not one of those. Like, not many people think that he was going to be a guy that maybe make that jump to Europe, and that DC is going to receive a huge sum of money in order, if that does happen. But we shall see whether or not this, of course, does happen. But now moving on, in terms of now talk about some news that is not related to transfer, and talk about some injury news. And unfortunately for the Portland Timbers, there is a bit of a bad news that their key defender Larys Mabiela and Darius Zuberic will probably not be available for the opener. Well, actually, I wouldn't say will probably not. It actually says that they might miss the opener the Timbers have after both of them undergo sports hernia surgery. And, you know, we'll see whether or not if that is going to be the case. I mean, the only good news I will say is that at least they're going to be losing these players in the opening game, or maybe the first couple of weeks. Because imagine if they lost them, like, during that playoff run. Yeah, that would definitely be very devastated, especially with the way that Mabiela, again, he was an absolute rock in that defense, and also even helped in terms of the goal scoring department, scoring the crucial goal in that game against the Rapids to propel this team to the Western Conference Final. And then, speaking of the Timbers, Jeff Antonelli, longtime Timbers goalkeeper, announced retirement after spending 9 years in MLS. And, you know, yesterday I literally did a Portland Timbers moving forward series talking about the goalkeeper situation. And unfortunately, after I done this video, this is when I found out Jeff Antonelli has retired. So, you know that feeling when you basically did a video and then literally you look at the news and basically found out that player that you've been talking about could be a key factor to the team decide to either decide to retire or trade to another team. Yeah, I mean, it happens, but now this also kind of just changed my kind of discussion, what I've said about the Timbers in the moving forward series, where now basically it's a battle between Ivicic and Bingham in terms of the goalkeeping spot. And at the end, I think Ivicic most likely is going to get that spot, because I think during his time when he had to cover for Steve Clark that was down for injury, he was actually really decent, albeit he sometimes could be a little bit inconsistent. But now also that means that most likely Bingham is going to be the backup. And imagine if David Bingham, and, you know, hopefully for the Timbers' sake that, you know, Ivicic doesn't get injured. But imagine if they have to play David Bingham in goal. Yeah, I feel sorry for a Timbers fan that you have to experience the David Bingham experiment, and that, you know, I will also say that I won't be surprised if he's going to be decent. Like, that would be the one thing that I've said about David Bingham, of how, you know, you already pissed off Quakes fan when he decided to jump ship to join the Galaxy, and then he turns out he sucked during his time with the Galaxy. But it would be a double will kind of F you to Quakes fans if he actually turns out to do well with the Timbers, and especially if he actually played the Quakes and he is basically the starting goalkeeper against the Quakes when the Portland Timbers played the Quakes at PayPal Park. Oh boy, there's going to be a lot of boo bursts that's going to be coming out of PayPal Park when David Bingham is announced, because you know that Quakes fans have not forgot about that, and I certainly have not forgot of how much of a stake move that David Bingham, of course, did during that time. But now moving on into the last news before we talk about the U.S. Men's National Team World Cup qualifier roster for January, is Canada. So they announced that they will have reduced capacity for the World Cup qualifying game against the U.S. Men's National Team in January in Hamilton. And this is just such a shame, because I really want this game to have full capacity, and it's absolutely they're going to be a sold out crowd, but it seems like now it's just going to be on a reduced capacity, and it's going to be 50% capacity for that game. And also, I kind of understand because, you know, Canada, they're very strict about this COVID situation, and especially with this Omicron situation. But also that kind of pissed off. They kind of just pissed off a lot of their own fans, of the way that a lot of their own fans have already bought tickets, and then they recently just announced that they're basically going to restart the ticketing process again. And yeah, I mean, that means that now those people that bought the tickets to the game, they're gonna have to fight to try to get the limited amount of tickets that they have already bought. But nevertheless, you know, it's a shame the fact that the game is gonna be played with reduced capacity, but there's no doubt that the atmosphere is gonna be equally as good. Like, whether this is reduced capacity or full capacity, you know, the Canadian fans are going to be really up for this game, and this could also maybe be a beginning of a rivalry too. I mean, we know that whenever the U.S. play Canada, everybody of course talk about the hockey rivalry, but you know, I want to see the soccer rivalry too, and I want to see kind of this to develop to be a decent rivalry in the end. Though I will say that I will always respect Canada, and I'm pretty sure U.S. men's national team fans will say the same thing, where, you know, they of course they want to make Canada like their new rival, but at the end of the day, we know the U.S. will always hate on Mexico forever, and that's always going to be the true rivalry that the U.S. will have in the CONCACAF region. But now, speaking of the U.S. men's national team, let's get to the World Cup qualifier January roster. So this basically is the January roster. I was thinking about making this a separate video, but when I look at the roster, it's pretty much almost the same as we saw in the November window. Though there are some player that is making their first appearance for the national team, and some new faces. You got Sean Johnson, who of course wasn't in the World Cup qualifier roster in November, will be on again in January, but making his debut. Gaga Salina from the Chicago Fire, getting a chance with the U.S. men's national team, and I've said before how Salina, he is a guy that is going to be a guy to watch out for, especially if he's going to have another breakout year with the Chicago Fire. And even though I know he's probably not going to get some minutes, because he's basically a fourth choice goalkeeper for this national team, don't be surprised he's probably going to be very happy the fact that he's going to finally get a chance with the national team. And, you know, maybe, just maybe, if he does well enough down the years, he could also be a guy that could be on the national team radar in the future. But then you got, of course, Steffen, who's the number one for this. Well, arguably the number one, because there's always that discussion. Is it going to be Steffen, or is it going to be Matt Turner that's going to be starting these games in the January window? And then in the defense, you got Reggie Kennan, Serginho Dest, Brooks Lennon, Mark McKenzie, and Anthony Robinson, Miles Robinson, and Deandre Yetland. There's really no name that should surprise you, other than maybe Reggie Kennan, who I don't know if he was part of the November roster that the U.S. men's national team had in the World Cup qualifier. If not, then of course he is making an appearance here in the January roster. Then in the midfield, you got Kellen Acosta, Tyler Adams, Luca De La Torre, Sebastian Lletget, Western McKennie, Jonas Musa, and Christian Rodin. Again, pretty much almost very similar, except for Luca De La Torre. I think this is his first time being on the World Cup qualifier roster. And then going forward in terms of the forward position, you got Brendan Aronson, Paul Arriola, Jordan Morris, Ricardo Pepi, Christian Pulisic, and Tim Way, and Jarzy Zardes making his return with the U.S. men's national team. And, you know, I think the only surprise is the fact that, you know, Josh Sargent is not being in this roster. And I already know that U.S. men's national team fans are fuming the fact that, look, Josh Sargent, he scored a brace against in that game that Norwich of course play over the weekend. Why in the world is he not getting a shot here? Well, here's the thing. Yes, Josh Sargent did score a brace in that Premier League game that Norwich was in, but let's be honest, Josh Sargent has not been a guy that has been consistent in terms of the goal scoring department. And it's also said another thing that when you look at during his time, especially in Norwich, he has not really done well whatsoever. And even in the national team, when he has get given the chance to start in that number 9 position. He has not delivered, and I think it's pretty clear that it seems like his stock is definitely started to lower in a sense that he almost has started to play himself out of the national team picture because of how poor of a form that he has had this season. So I don't mind the fact that Sargent is not part of this team, and Jarzy Zardes, a guy that is a veteran player for this national team, and although there's going to be always that critics about how Jarzy Zardes doesn't do well in the biggest moment for the national team, at least you have that veteran presence of a team that has so many young guys in this team. And it's great that you have a lot. I've seen the U.S. have a lot of these young talent, but at the end of the day, you still need to have a veteran present in the locker room. And again, Jarzy Zardes, along with a couple of these U.S. men's national team players that has started to rack up about 40 to 50 plus caps, that they bring the veteran present into the locker room to these relatively young guys that is in this team, and most likely are starting for the U.S. men's national team in this World Cup qualifier. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys do like, smash the subscribe button. I know this has been a relatively long video because we talked about the World Cup qualifier roster and just tons of news that happened in the past couple of days. But if you enjoyed this video, let me know in the or if you enjoyed this video, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of all these news, and if there's any news I didn't mention on the board, let me know in the comments below. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.